Who are you?
Well, I am Orlaida. An Orlaida Cabrera Gutiérrez, 71 years old. Cuban. I was born in Havana for a humble family. My father used to sell newspaper in the street before the revolution. Graduated in the University of Havana. Later on, I continued my studies, and I am master in international policy, and also I'm crazy for a study, no? So meanwhile I was studying at the university. I studied French, and I learned English, and I am graduating both languages. And I like to research, and then sometimes I dedicate my time to research, mainly since the political point of view, situation of different countries, but mainly in my Africa. Also, I participate in the creation of the militias, territorial militias troop, the women's territorial militias group. I was one of the, it was 20 years or something, I was one of the youngest members of the female militias, territorial militias troop for defend the revolution when the Americans start with their American government, not American people, American government, start to their projections against Cuba and the political system that we, the Cubans, decided to assume different organizations and so on, so on, so. I have two children, two sons and daughter. One son, one daughter, and that's all.
Okay. And you have met Fidel many times, I think?
Well, for me, it looks like that it was sometimes because see Fidel or talk to Fidel or translate to Fidel were really, for me, an honor. And then do the work that I did, because for 46 years I was working with the Cuban Institute of Friendship with the People. ICAP, that is an institution created for develop solidarity with the countries or with the movement or with the organization, right organization or movement that really needs solidarity for their independence or for to keep their security or for their nationality. And because of the languages that I talk, I have the opportunity to participate in different events, international events, and to be paying attention to different delegations, no matter the country, just because of the language or just because they were part of my work. So in that way, I sometimes, at the very beginning in the 70s, I have the honor to translate for him. Very nervous, always thinking I cannot commit mistake because he's the president. But he always, because Fidel was very human, and as I am not so tall, he always put the hand in my side and said, don't worry, because Fidel understands English, but he never talked. Fidel knew English but never talked. And then I participate in some international events in which, in some occasions, for some commemorations or some activities in which he participated, and I be at that moment with one of the delegation. And he came to extend a salutation or something like this to the delegation. I had to translate. Also, because of the working with the Pastor for Peace from the United States, which I was working for a few years since ICAP, from ICAP, no, doing my work as an officer from ICAP, or to participate in some of the commemorations celebrating in Cuba, and in which I used to be with some delegations invited, or guests, or special guests, like when a delegation who came from the United States when Angela Davis was released from the jail, and then I was working with that delegation that was made up by Angela Davis, the great writer Alice Walker, Danny Glover, and some members of the black organization with the Scandinavian countries. And that's why I have so strong friends here. And also that made me come to the country almost every year. Because Sweden gave to Cuba a very strong solidarity. Strongest during the Olof Palme direction of the country. And by such a coincidence of the life, I was here in Stockholm, in Sweden, but in Stockholm specifically, at the moment of such a sad situation of his assassination. Then I got the honor to participate in the funerals together with another friend of Cuba. It was the only time that I was so close of such terrible situation. And then I saw in person the sadness of the Swedish people, the big damage that created that assassination in this great country, the incredibility of all the people, even us, the foreigners who were in the country, from one situation or another, that this happened, that this could happen, that a person, a president who were so close to his people, who used to be with his wife without any person taking care, because he trusts his people, he trusts the community, he trusts everybody. And coming out from the movie, I was the person who was organizing with the solidarity movement here in Cuba, the Nordic Brigades in Havana. I used to be the leader of the Nordic Brigade as for the Cuban side. And that allowed me to know many people from Scandinavia and good amount of person and friends from Sweden, from Finland, from Norway, and also visited those countries. Even I was the first Cuban woman who went to Iceland.
But then, as a contrast, you have also been very close to Africa.
Yes, because during all those years, I passed through different positions or to different positions in ICAP work. As I said, I started in 1970 working as ICAP as a officer, simple officer, and I start to work with the North American groups. And then that's what I work with the second Venceremos Brigade, because I was not in the first, with the second Venceremos Brigade. But in 1985, I start to work with Scandinavia. And then in 89, it was a necessity that have a person who be able to work with the African countries as a specialist in African countries. I didn't know too much about African countries, just like what everybody knows, in 89. And then I start to work with those countries and travel to those countries. And as Africa is so far from Cuba, and the tickets were expensive, what we did, me and the director that I had at that moment, were to make a schedule in order to visit 5-6 countries in one time, in order to know each country with their differences and their common sense. And because the Africans, as you know, began the movement of liberation after the 60s. Mm-hmm. And then that's why it was so interesting, so important to establish a good connection since the solidarity point of view with Cuba. And then I had that. It was my task to know more about those countries and to develop our solidarity with them. Mm-hmm. And I started to travel then, and so. And then in this way, I got the possibility to know the majority of the 61 countries of Africa. Africa has 57, and the other are from Arabian, Middle East countries that are part. I pay attention to the whole. And during those years, I became General Director for the work with Africa and Middle East. And then after being in Nigeria, Federal Republic of Nigeria, Republic of, what is it? Equatorial Guinea, and I was ambassador in both countries, Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea, and then we established a strong and official relation, and I was representative of Cuba in the Organization of West Africa Economical Development. So it allowed me to know a lot of Africa, to be in love of Africa. Mm-hmm. And I was working with Africa. First, it was in 89 to 92. I came back. It was a period in which it was necessary that I passed to work with the U.S., the North American Solidarity Movement with Cuba for 90 from I went to Africa from 89 to 93. In 93, I restart to work with U.S. for the necessity of ICAP, because ICAP have a big arms, because we work with the whole work. Mm-hmm. But we are not so many. So as I have a previous experiences working, and then at that time was coming the Pastor for Peace, another organization coming to Cuba in solidarity campaign against the blockade, mainly, and so on, with the Reverend Lucius Walker in front of. So I was working with U.S. again till 99, the beginning of 99. And from the beginning to 99 to the moment I just retired to rest. It means 2016. If there is something that I regret, really, of my retirement, is to be away from the Africas. Africa's aspect and situations, and as a secret, I couldn't stay at home. And then one day, when I retired, I was resting a few months. But then one day, I decided to start to work in some commissions of a association of culture, of the culture and writers and artists of Cuba.
Okay.
And then I start to participate in different conferences and so on about the situations in Africa, Middle East, and so on. And nowadays I'm working in the Cuban association from United Nations dealing with the African solidarity movement.
So you're back again.
In the ACNU, the Cuban Association of United Nations. But just in this case, I'm just studying and following the situation of those countries, mainly to the organizations or countries who, for one reason or another, are not totally free. Like the Sahara movement, the people from the Sahara.
Yeah, this is
the people from
the last colony.
The last colony in Africa is the Sahara. Also, the question of Puerto Rico, that is still an associate state. I'm following and study, and I make my projections, and of course give the solidarity of Cuba.
Are there still Sahrawi youth studying in Cuba?
Yes, the Sahrawi, we have a good amount. We have been receiving Sahrawi to study in Cuba since a few years, many years ago. They have prepared in the international medical school.
Yeah.
And we already have, they have been released as doctors, men and women, nurses and specialists. They have been preparing also since the secondary school or primary school till a university graduation or technical specialist graduation, in order they can reincorporate to their country and help to obtain what they deserve as a human being, as a people with all the rights to be free and to make their life. And I hope that someday in United Nations they'll be able to take a decision of the rights of the Saharian, of the people from the Western Sahara, really deserve as a human being to be free, to make their life, and not somebody who want to handle them as an animals. is the Sahara, the Western Sahara movement is the one who really deserve solidarity because they are just looking for their life.
Yeah.
Not for treasures, nor for biggest reconnaissance, just to be recognized as a human being with the right to have their land that are there.
Yeah.
Like a Palestinian.
Yeah.
What is happening with Palestinians is terrible.
Yeah.
Israel has decided to destroy Palestinians, to destroy them. And then what they are doing with the people, even with their religious believing, destroying, not allowing them to visit their sacred places, self-defining by them as an Israeli, to put embassies in the very sacred place that belongs to the old ones who believe in their religion. So this is, and then supported by the strongest and terrible government of the United States.
Yeah.
It's terrible. So we just Cubans, people criticize, but what the only thing we do is to give solidarity with people.
A last question.
Yeah.
What do you think about your new president in Cuba?
Well, Fidel was Fidel. Fidel was Fidel, and Fidel remained in our heart, in our mind, and in everything that revolution had done and did since the moment they were in Sierra Maestra. Because since they were in Sierra Maestra, the first things that Fidel, Raúl, Che Guevara, and those people who were leading that was create a rural school, even under the balls, under the fight. So since that moment, and then Fidel, with the vision of the future, did incredible thing and was our great comandante, our great leader, and Fidel is alive in the heart of everybody. But life continues, and Cuba needs to have a president who go ahead, strong president that it was Raúl during the time he was after Fidel passed away. And now the decision to have elections and Raúl stay as first secretary of the Communist Party, and to have this new presidente, Miguel Diaz-Canel, with the Cubans who think, who follow the policy internal and international policy of Cuba, we think that it was a good decision. And it was, and it's not that I think that because, as you can see, my commitment with the revolution came since I was very child. Because my family, by my father and my mother lines on both sides, were very linked to the revolutionary movement against Batista and the people who were ruling and destroying Cuba since that moment. And I grew in that environment of the supporters of the peoples in the guerrillas, paper in the street. And then, since the revolution, I studied, I am what I was what I did, and I am what I am. And Miguel Diaz-Canel is very well prepared. Miguel Diaz-Canel is from the province of Santa Clara, and he started as a professor, as a dean of the university, later as a dean of the University of Villa Clara, and later he came to work as a member of the direction of the high university, no, higher education in Cuba. Later, Deputy Minister of Higher Education, Minister of Higher Education, and later on, well, he was step by step. And he was preparing, and he's very well prepared since the political point of view, since the educational point of view, and he grew from the bottom, so he knows what really means to be a Cuban since the bottom to the top. Cuba will not be the best all over the world, but it's not the health. It's a country who advance, who work, and who respect itself and its citizenship.
Thank you.
No, sorry, I talked too much.